just a tremendous pickup for Florida State, especially with how they're starting to get involved in this transfer portal now. And I just feel like Darin Green and I will be linked forever. So hope he's a good player. The night he did that to Florida State was
that was an exciting day.
That was the day I got engaged. So I feel like we'll just be linked in a ring of harmony for the rest of our lives.
What the fuck?
And Florida State.
Man, this is a pretty lengthy podcast. I was not expecting us to have a 2-hour podcast, but here we are. A lot of good content in this one all around. I like it. If I was an FSU fan, I'd probably come here and rate Nate probably a C+ on the interruptions, but not too bad. Not too bad. It could have been a D.
I'd rate you a F- as a host because you're a douchebag.
Hey guys, it's Terrence Mann. You're listening to Hear the Spear, presented by Noel Game Day. Go Noles.
Hey, what's up? This is Peter Ward, aka E-Dub, in the house. We're listening to Hear the Spear, presented by Noel Game Day. Go live, go Noles.
Hi, this is Charlie Ward, and you're listening to Hear the Spear. Go Noles.
This is Terrell Buckley. You're listening to Hear the Spear, presented by Noel Game Day. No Bloody.
But perhaps better known as the greatest corner to ever step on a football field, Deion Primetime Sanders.
Great Deion Sanders, my brother. What's going on, man? I could wake up to that greeting every day, man. That was awesome.
Hello, Noles fans. This is former Seminole Derek Brooks, and you're listening to Hear the Spear, presented to you by Noel Game Day.
James Wilder Jr. What's going on, James?
Thanks for having me on. FSOD, Florida State or Die, and go Noles.
William Bar None Floyd.
Gentlemen, what's up?
What is happening, guys? It's Logan Robinson from Hear the Spear, presented to you by NoelGameDay.com. We are here on a fantastic, just absolutely stunning Thursday here in Tallahassee as the spring has fully wrapped up. The Amarius Mims saga has finished, and now we get to jump into the fun, which is transfer portal, which seems to be kicking right now for Florida State and Tallahassee with more potential players entering soon. We'll talk about that in a little bit. With me this evening is Austin Veazey, lead basketball writer down below. I like the little Vikings jersey we got there. It's not Dalvin's, but you got to wait until that number 4 comes in, right?
Yeah, I mean, I did find out by wearing this today that Randy Moss lives in Charlotte. So Randy Moss, if you're listening, come by the store.
Or be a guest on the podcast, maybe?
Or can be a guest on the podcast, either way.
Something like that. But go to the store first and get the numbers. D-Lou at the top, lead writer and editor with us this evening. And also Nate Greer, lead recruiting insider. Gentlemen, how we doing? Good evening. Are we feeling good?
I don't know. It's going to be a tough episode because once we wrap up the spring football talk, then it's just we're stuck until August. Like, what are we going to do after tonight?
Yeah,
we go back to doing trivia.
We can make fun of Logan.
Well,
we're stepping into the abyss after tonight.
Stepping into the abyss.
I think we do every week one thing we hate about Logan. And we can talk about that.
You already do that enough in the group chat, so I don't know what else.
That could go on for years.
You can make it public.
It doesn't entertain you enough. That doesn't entertain you enough in the group chats. Unbelievable. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of slowdown, but we're going to hope to grab a lot of guests moving forward. I will go ahead and say that we will have a 2013 national champion on this show, maybe 2 next week.
Yeah, I thought we were having 2.
One. Yeah, we're going to have 2 2013 national champions, and I think this will be the first time those 2 have been on together. So, as always, those usually create some pretty funny episodes. So, we're going to try to bring some more little entertainment while things slow down here in Tallahassee, and we're hoping to have some more guests on FSU's coaching side and assistant-wise, and maybe some players throughout the offseason. So trying to get you guys linked up with some more content as we all have to sit back and wait, and the true dead part of the offseason begins. But as always, listen to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube. If you're on one of those platforms, hit the subscribe button. If you're also on YouTube right now, definitely appreciate it if you hit the like button. It's not mandatory, but would definitely appreciate it. And make sure you hit the sub button because we're going to start uploading a lot more videos heading in the next couple of months. So you'll definitely want to subscribe so you'll be notified every time I release a new video on there. Gentlemen, let's get started because Florida State is having some transfers outside of the program. We'll start off with number 1, tight end Kobe Gross decides to leave Florida State. Came from JUCO's side. He'll have 4 years of eligibility moving forward. Sadly, was injured through kind of the early part, really early part of spring camp. And I believe near
first drill
pads came on. Yep, first day when pads fully came on.
First drill, first day.
First drill, first day.
Oh, down, yeah. So he couldn't even have a chance to put the pads on. But, yep, as we know, Florida State's tight end room is very heavy right there in the first part. So maybe not too much of a depth loss. But I was actually looking forward to Kobe because I thought he looked good. I thought he looked better than he worked on his body a ton, being able to see him in person after the last couple of months working with Coach Storms. But, maybe not a major impact guy and, wishing him the best. But thoughts on Kobe Gross hitting the portal? Good kid, too.
It's your guy, Nate. I was going to let you go.
I think there's a little bit of surprise there, on his end. Maybe not necessarily something that he wanted, but at the end of the day, it comes down to availability of scholarship and space. So that's what it simply boils down to for him. And he got banged up last year, got banged up in camp, and now that those have happened, he's pretty much been asked to move on. And I understand the dynamics of the business. You got to keep your roster, however you feel like it needs to be going into the season. But looks like that he's probably going to have to go. There's been some interest from what I've heard, and he's talking about possibly going the JUCO route and seeing what's available, next spring. So, you look at the tight end room, and Cam is your defined starter. You have Douglas, who's more of a blocker. You have Daniel, who's more of a blocker. White Rector had a pretty solid spring. He's an athlete that can do different things. Brian Courtney, he struggled adapting to the college play, but I don't know if we're going to talk about the back end if Florida State wants to maybe look at that room and maybe bring in one more. There's some numbers there, but there's still not a lot of talent. Jackson West is a guy that maybe disappointed a little bit during spring, but still has a lot of ability. So we'll see. But I wish Kobe a lot of luck. As you said,
yeah.
he is a good kid and really liked being in Tallahassee.
Yeah, it was a tough path for the kid. Really felt like he got the short end of things because he had that JUCO season get canceled in 2020. Didn't get any game reps leading up to enrolling at Florida State. He wasn't an early enrollee, came in the summer, so he was already a bit behind. And then, suffered the setbacks last year with some of those injuries, and finally looks good in tour of duty. And you're thinking, all right, you might see something from the kid. And day one early gets injured, knocked out for the whole spring. It's just really tough predicament for him because they're, like you said, Nate, there's outside of Cam McDonald, there's not really a proven guy in that room. Wyatt Rector, he had an impressive spring, but will he be able to carry that through an entire 12 game season in the fall? Who knows at this point? And Jackson West, still an unknown. You've got the 2 true freshmen. Jarrell Powers not even here yet. And also Marcus and Douglas, who's also a pretty big wild card himself. So, Kobe could have made an impact in that room, and it just sucks that it went the way that it did. But, he represented Florida State extremely well when he was here, despite the criticism, and just wish him all the best and finding a new home.
Yeah, no, he definitely represented Florida State very well, and definitely with a lot of the battles on FSU Twitter going crazy, definitely a pretty lethal group on there, and give a lot of players a hard time, and don't really maybe
there's a lot of motivation. Sorry, Logan. A lot of motivation on his part to kind of prove the naysayers wrong. So, You know, I know there's a lot of debate on taking him. I understand why they took him. A lot of people were retweeting my tweet earlier before. I forget where. I think it was after the season. I don't remember when I tweeted it out. So, but no, I stand by what I tweeted. So,
Yeah, and that tight end room now, like y'all were saying, Cam McDonald's your leading guy there, and I think Rector is probably your number 2 right behind him. But you're really looking for more of a person that can play the experience, because you don't really have that after Cam. Rector has a good amount, but after that, you're hoping that someone can pick up steam. You still got Marcus and Douglas too, who had like small little flashes during the spring, but you're not expecting a whole ton from him heading into 2022. So this is something that later on, when we get later on into the show, as one of the grades, position grades for a group, that's one that I'm pretty not so sold on heading into 2022, and that stings. It feels like it's been that way for a while now, so we'll see. But you've also got young guys, Bryant Corney here, that Jackson West, if things can get going for them, pick up some steam. It just seems like they're taking a little bit longer adjusting into the college level, and that sucks. It feels like Cam McDonald's been here for 18 years, and
I will say too, it's kind of surprising. We talked about here, I think 2 years ago, maybe with Norvell, about how tight ends kind of have a lot of success in his offense, and we just really haven't seen it here since he's been here.
Yeah, and Preston Daniel can't be a guy that's your pivotal player at tight end either. That can't be. That's what he was being using. He's a blocker, different than Cam, but that was your 2 deep guy after Cam.
Austin, how many catches did Cam have last year? Like 14, 24? It wasn't a lot.
I can find it real quick.
Yeah, I don't. Well, it didn't really start picking up, I feel like, till the latter half of the season. They used him a lot down the middle quite a bit, and you got to see Jordan Travis connect well with him.
It was 24. 24 catches for 243 yards.
Yeah. And that stinks because you don't have a threat at tight end, at least in the passing game. You don't really have a true threat. Cam, I think, can be that, but I think you're already reached that ceiling with Cam. And that's not a knock on him, but that's where you're looking at. Hopefully, that's why you recruit, and you hope to bring in some more threats there at tight end. And that's something heading into 2022. I wonder if they'll find an answer there in the portal or somewhere. But if Rector, we saw a pretty decent spring from him, but it wasn't a spring where you're like, okay, golly, he's going to compete for Cam for starting position. This is like a magnitude changing kind of guy. So that's something we'll discuss probably later on. Another player that has decided to enter the transfer portal is Darin Green Jr, linebacker, sophomore, and he saw what he saw in the spring and said, hey, I think I'm just gonna maybe try elsewhere. You saw bring in Tatum Bethune. You've got guys around him that have started to play very well. You see Gaynor. You've also got Steven Dix Jr. and Lundy is expected starter heading into next season. And then maybe Omar Graham, true freshman, who, Maddox was out there with us at every practice and was watching him tightly and, definitely made some strides there. So this is what happens during the spring. There's going to be transfers we're going to talk about in a minute, but just solely focus on Jadarius McKnight. I don't think this is a huge major loss. You would have wished things were clicking because this guy came in a talented recruit out of high school.
I think that
yeah, I don't think it's a very surprising loss. Back to even when tour of duty was going on, he was kind of a guy that I was looking at maybe as a potential transfer candidate down the road, and you just saw it throughout the spring. He was a little bit buried in that rotation with Kalen Deloach continuing to impress and Tatum Bethune coming in and showing some signs. So, he just wasn't going to make that flash, it seemed like, and started out his career as a DB, eventually got moved to linebacker last year, kind of in and out of things with some injuries, and then played a little bit towards the end of the season. But he's a guy that you can tell he wanted to get on the field and show what he can do, and I don't think that was going to happen this upcoming fall with the way that linebacker room is right now.
20 years ago, he would have been a beast at that rover spot under Mickey Andrews. That's just the style of safety that he was. The guy to come up in the box and lay the wood on you. I just think that he's a tweener. In today's game, he's not a safety, and he's too small for linebacker. He's 5'11". We see 5'11" linebackers, but he's not. It's different. He's not. It's not 5. He's doesn't necessarily have the frame to be a complete linebacker. So I just think that he was kind of, I don't want to say positionless in this defense, but I think I'll go with that term because he's too big for safety and not necessarily big enough for what they like to do on defense. So at best, he would have been a special teams guy. I understand him looking elsewhere because he can go somewhere else and maybe play in a different defense that he can move back to safety, his natural position. So it's a kid I like coming out. He has some really good film and he stayed committed for a long time. It's just that some kids don't really develop much more when they get to college, and I think that's what you saw here.
Yep, no, and didn't see much from spring from him. And you look at if you're going to go compete in the DB room, that's already kind of maybe one of the hardest positions right now because I think you're going to see even more guys out of that defensive back room transfer. So, he goes down to linebacker, gives that a try. But, that's kind of the same way with, Brendan Gann almost, but they're two different. I think Gann is maybe even more slimmer than him, but they're both tweener kind of players where they're right in between. Gainer has more size than both of these guys, and Gainer's still, projected as more of a tweener type guy, but he's put on more size, and you kind of know what you're getting from him. So definitely a difficult kind of situation for Jadarius, and so definitely hoping that he can find an opportunity somewhere. But now that linebacker room kind of thins out a little bit more and more and more, and it's taken a pretty decent hit.
But if you look at it with the style of defense they play, you don't need a 4 deep at that spot. You need 5 or 6 guys that can play, maybe cross train a little bit, play different spots, but you don't need a ton of linebackers.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's too concerning right now. You're still at 7 scholarship linebackers, and you're probably going to have 2 on the field the majority of the time. And really, I think there's 5 guys, maybe even 6 in that group that could contribute, maybe 7 if you add in a walk-on Cortez Andrews, who played a little bit last year. But Tatum Bethune, Deloach up top. Then you've got DJ Lundy and Amari Gaynor, and also Omar Graham Jr. Had some impressive flashes during spring practice and could become a viable option as the season goes on. He gets some experience. And then there's still Steven Diggs Jr. Maybe things finally come to life. So we'll just have to see. I'm not too concerned with where linebacker stands at the moment, though.
If one, I didn't realize how young Omar was. He still went through at 17 years old.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of physical maturing to do, and he looked pretty solid. But I agree with Dustin. You got 4 guys, 5 guys. If Bethune, Deloach, Dix, and Gaynor can stay, not Dix, but Lundy can stay healthy, and then if you can get something from Dix, you got 5 guys that can, I think, man that spot for you. With Omar Graham playing some, spot reserve roles, and I think there's your 6 guys that can really, contribute at linebacker for Florida State in the fall.
I want to go to a question back here from Tom on Facebook asking, how about moving Burrell to tight end? This has always been brought up, I think, quite a bit. But I don't see that happening. I don't think he should be. I know everybody wants him to be some crazy just build guy and be a, if it's not going to be a speedy route runner, then we got to move him to tight end. If you're not moving Johnny Wilson to tight end, then you're definitely not going to move Burrell. I think his certain position at wide receiver, I think you're going to like where he's at. I don't see Florida State making any move there. He's not tall enough, in my opinion, either for that position.
He's not tall enough, doesn't have long enough arms. He's not built for a tight end. He's going to be a guy.
Not there to block either. I don't know what you have.
He's going to be a guy that surprises some people, I think, in the slot.
I don't think he's a full-time tight end, but it wouldn't surprise me if Florida State lined up Burrell and Johnny Wilson at tight end sometimes to create mismatches in the passing game. But it's not going to be a full-time move or anything like that where he's getting down there blocking on the goal line and to that level of it. More to take advantage of the receiving factor and creating mismatches and coverages against linebackers and things like that. Because I really do think that would be a good advantage for Florida State.
It's a question from Camilo asking, is Damari Tate, Florida State defensive back, starting this year? I don't think we are any of us expecting him to start. And I don't believe he has a chance to jump into that 2 deep. We saw him a few times this spring compete the 2 deep, but I think there's a lot of high expectations from him, and this was his best spring, probably his best camp since arriving at Florida State, and you got to hope things click for him, but not expecting him to be a starter. You would love for him to develop it and get some burn in there, but I just don't see enough college experience for him. Definitely not to start, but you got to hope that he can jump in 2 deep.
I was just saying, make sure you read our defensive depth chart prediction tomorrow, whenever it gets posted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to start, but I do think there's some potential he gets involved into the rotation. And then from there, who knows? Because, he is a 5-star talent. Just he had a tough beginning to his college career. Didn't have a spring in 2020, missed last year in spring with the injury, kind of had some academics that kept him off the field. I think it was that 2020 season. And then last year just couldn't break into things after that early injury. He was too far behind. So we'll just have to see. But, the kid is extremely talented. He was that top recruit in Florida State's first class under Mike Norvell, the 2020 transition class, whatever the heck you want to call it. And there's a talent to tap there. And I thought you saw a little bit of it this spring, but it just hasn't been enough consistent yet, especially with how some of those other younger defensive backs are playing, like Kevin Knowles, Marion Cooper, guys like that. So it is going to be tough for him to get a starting spot, but he could be a contributor.
Yeah, he's healthy and he has some confidence. So, build from that and see what happens.
They also got Grady Vance in there, and you get to see some signs and great flashes. A great, starting spring from Ezra Thomas and Sam McCall. So it's still a battle there for Damari Tate, and saw the flashes, but you got to see continuous patterns of that for that to happen, and that'll be a big fall camp for him too. So and into that. So we'll keep an eye on Damari for sure. Hope things click for him. Hope things do.
It would be big for the secondary if they did.
It would be very nice because you got the physical attributes. It's just always about clicking mentally for him, I think. And I thought you saw that this spring and really some really good signs from it, but consistency. Let's see that consistent. Or we're talking about every practice. We talked about it once or twice, but I want to see it continuously talk about you. So, yeah. Let's talk about the latest and the final. And the final chapter is over for Amarius Mims and that whole situation there. He ends up deciding to go back to Georgia. He decides to go back to Georgia after having a pretty solid trip to Tallahassee. Got to enjoy the scenery in the 850 and also got to be treated like a king inside the program at Florida State with what we heard was a really good visit. Just things didn't seem to go well. It's probably be a continuous conversation. But, Florida State Twitter going crazy. You've got another outlet reporting that he's signed. I don't know what he's signing, but he's signed with FSU. But just seemed to be just a whole cluster F, and also thoughts and prayers to him and his teammate, his high school teammate, and that ended up maybe reversing his visit plans for the rest of the weekend and made him and his family go back home. And I'm sure that was a pretty difficult process for him to handle, with also having media just all warped around him here in Tallahassee, and didn't help that a commitment, in quote, commitment happened and a signing happened. Probably wasn't too great for that situation, but maybe it just is what it is kind of dealio. And he goes back to want to play for Kirby Smart, which he'll have to compete for a starting spot. And so you wonder, did Florida State fumble the bag here? Did Georgia throw a bag? Did Kirby Smart say, oh, no, I want you to go to Florida State, but no, I want you to come back? Just a very interesting situation from a guy that would have been a big-time game changer for Florida State's offensive line and as a not just offensive line. We're talking team as a whole. What are y'all's thoughts on a miss here, I guess, for Mike Norvell and the staff? Or, it's tough. This is the young kid still trying to figure out his future. But, once again, Florida State fans get their heart broken in half. It just continues. It just doesn't stop. I keep telling people to stop getting so invested. That's the thing. Just don't get on Twitter. Don't get so invested. Don't start doing the hashtags again. I swear, if Florida State fans keep doing those damn hashtags, will they not learn? Stop doing the hashtags. Stop it. Don't do it anymore.
My thoughts are, I don't think that FSU fumbled anything. I think they did a hell of a job on the visit. I think they presented a lot of positive options in there being the school for Mims. But, hearing some things behind the scenes of them being, very spiritual, whatnot, I think that everything that happened, from an FSU media site jumping the gun to, the tragedy that happened in his hometown, not saying that that's why, but maybe they decided that those were signs to stay where he was at. And I'm sure Georgia swung back around because they did not want him to leave. Quite sure Georgia swung back around to see what, Florida State had to offer him. And, and I'm sure that, their sales pitch helped convince them to stay in Georgia. But, man, it's a kick in the stomach, man, because it looked like there for a little bit that it was definitely going to happen. It looked like Florida State was going to get their guy finally at tackle, and it just didn't happen again. So, I know us here, we're not concerned about tackle, but, we all felt that would be a definite answer to the maybe one last question mark for the offense. But now they go back to the drawing board. But I would not say Norvell fumbled anything. I thought that, from everything we heard, it was an awesome experience, and they did an awesome job. So sometimes, fate, if you believe in fate and if you believe in that things are the way they're supposed to be, maybe that's how it's supposed to be. And, Florida State finishes second once again.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't make up Florida State's bad luck at this point. Amarius Mims enters the transfer portal on, I believe it was April 10th. 3 days later, he's arriving in Tallahassee on Wednesday night, begin that official visit on Thursday. Coaching staff's there to meet him. Seems like everything starts off very well, and then boom, that same night, a false media report comes out, and next day goes through his visit. Seems like everything's okay. And then on Friday morning, obviously the tragedy happened in Georgia with his high school teammate passing away, and that caused everything to end earlier than expected. And as you noted, Nate, his family headed back to Georgia. And from there, it was kind of radio silence for, 24, 48 hours or so. And I reached out to a Georgia source, and they said that Amarius Mims had been back on UGA's campus over the weekend and had been back with some teammates. And I asked, what changed? What made him change his mind? And he said, honestly, I don't know what changed. Like that's a direct quote from the source. And, you can't fault what Florida State did here. Alex Atkins, he's had that relationship for a long time. Norvell was personally attached at the hip with Mims throughout this visit. From what we've heard on our side, Florida State had a pretty good NIL offer out to Mims, so they did their part on that front as well. And I just think the chaos of that 48 hours, from the media report maybe making him feel like, all right, he can't feel totally comfortable with this program if stuff like that is going to get leaked so quickly, and then also the passing of his friend. I mean, just I don't know if I've ever, and I'm still pretty new to this, but I don't know if I've dealt with a recruitment like that before. It was a very chaotic 3 or 4 days, and just hope that his family and him are good at this time, especially with everything that's happened, and wish him the best at Georgia. It's tough for Florida State, but I want that kid to find success with everything that he's having to go through. I can't imagine how tough it's been on him. It's tough for Florida State fans, but think about what they're dealing with the last week or so.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, there was a comment about Mims using FSU as more of a pay increase to Georgia. I definitely don't think it's anything close to that. But,
No.
I think there was legitimate desire to see what was out there. It seems like that, Georgia was liking Mims more as a guard. He wants to play tackle. Like Dustin said, he's got a very long-term relationship with Coach Atkins. Florida State rolled out the red carpet and then some. A lot of the team was interacting with him, so they did a great job. And sometimes it just isn't meant to be. But man, what could have been?
Yeah, I know. Definitely. And you got to think now Florida State's going to continue to look at the transfer portal continuously to work on that offensive line. Definitely the tackle position. You see Atkins going and visiting now with a few players. So, working that transfer portal and continuing to figure out maybe some answers there, because you can tell after spring they still don't feel so solidified with that depth at least. And maybe starting position, but at least the depth Florida State wants to build on. And I will say, after watching these spring practices, that was one of the weakest things, was that second string. Florida State has got to find an answer there. I don't know if it's just because, and I don't think it's this way. I mean, I do think that you do have two also potential starters with Malcolm Ray and Jared Jackson in there. So yeah, you're facing two guys that could start in a lot of programs, but still that can't be the case with those guys just wrecking through the second string at offensive line, and you're hoping to build that talent. That's what comes with the cycle of building that offensive line like Coach Atkins is doing. You finally have a true offensive line class coming in that is going to be your rebuild year, but it's not going to be immediate. So they're going to continue to have to go to that transfer portal to find guys that have the college experience to play there and perform, and they don't have that at the moment.
They have to find an offensive tackle in the portal. They have to. Have to.
Yep. No.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you look at it, you have 2-3 quality options right now across both tackle positions with Darius Washington, Rob Scott, and Bless Harris. I mean, is there anyone outside of that right now you'd feel comfortable manning that tackle spot for Florida State in a game? I don't know if you can say there is. I mean, you've seen some signs from Lloyd Willis. Hopefully Rod will work and can keep developing, but they're just not ready yet for that fire. So I definitely think Florida State needs to continue to scour that transfer portal to find somebody to just shore up the depth, because, Darius Washington, he had some injury issues last year. Rob Scott did as well. So if those guys get banged up, I mean, where are you going? And this was the problem that Florida State had last year. Whenever you had one of those guys in that starting five go out, or even two of them, I mean, things just collapsed. So depth has been a problem for, a long time at this point. But Florida State's offensive line, it is in a position to improve, but when it gets beat up, which is going to happen over a physical 12-game, 13, 14-game season, you need guys that you can slide in who are quality replacements. And like you mentioned, Logan, I don't know that there's a ton of guys that they have in that role right now, especially at offensive tackle. Maybe you feel a little bit more comfortable about the interior, shifting some guys around, but not outside.
I think Rod Orr, I'll answer that question. From everything I heard, is definitely has a lot of things to work on. His footwork, primarily. There's some thoughts maybe that he's not a tackle on this level. Maybe he's a guard. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him, because he's got a lot of skill, a lot of talent. But again, offensive line is it's hard, man. It's a hard position to evaluate. It's a hard position to come in and play right away unless you're truly special. There's not a lot of Evan Neals. There's not a lot of guys that come in and play right away. Perfect example is J.C. Latham, the 5-star number 1 tackle last year's class, rode the bench the entire year, played very spot duty at Alabama. Yeah, Alabama has other guys, but he was a can't miss 5-star. It's hard to evaluate that spot. So that's why Mims would have been such a godsend for this program.
Someone in the comments here saying that Mims verse would be pretty fun to watch, and I'm right there with you, Timmy, from YouTube. That would have been, get the popcorn ready for that. definitely would have been fun to watch. Sign me up. Sadly, doesn't seem like that's going to be happening. So, but you never know. It always seems like it's Mims until it ain't here in Tallahassee.
But
so
it's going to happen in the national championship game. So we'll see it later in the year.
There you go.
You booting up NCAA later?
Yeah. So I want to bring this up before we do this spring position grades and then move on to some basketball, because this won't be a long one for you guys tonight. But I want to bring this up because, we're hearing some more things that there's going to be some additional transfers happening. Exit interviews are continuing happening. Some have already wrapped up, and we're expecting to hear a few more names hit that transfer portal. And so, we're hearing a good amount of guys, and that might shock a few people. And, that was kind of, we maybe weren't expecting it too much, but, we weren't expecting a number though that we've been hearing, and it's a decent number. And I think I'm trying to think from Norvell's side of things, and we understand that he's a coach that is straight up with you, and we saw that right away. Whenever Florida State came into Tallahassee and he built his staff, he told players, things aren't going to work out here, that he wants to change the locker room and the culture, and that's understandable. But now this feels like more of the locker room has been, fixed. It's still ongoing a little bit, but it's almost at that finalization point where that culture is fixed. But now it seems like you're thinning out some players that might not see playing time, and you're hoping to bring in maybe a bigger class in 2023, because Mike Norvell really liked what he saw this spring. And he said that to us. He really liked how intense and competitive this spring was. He said that was the best one practically that he's been on campus for. And he's only been here for a short time, but you could just tell from him and the way that he was saying it and the confidence through this whole spring camp that he really felt very high of this team leaving 2022 spring. Is he feeling like this next season is going to be a pretty good one for him? You get that 7, even 8 win, which would be huge on recruiting, to maybe build up your 2023 class. Because if you got to think about it, Florida State's doing so well with 8 wins in the last 2 seasons and getting some of these guys on campus and they're putting them at number 2, number 3, which years and years ago, that wasn't the case. Does Norvell know something that we don't, and he's preparing to build a bigger 2023 class? I know, Nate, you and I talked about it this morning on the phone. Is that something that, Norvell's planning ahead, and he feels pretty well with what he has right now, and is kind of saying, hey, we got to thin the room a little bit and get ready for 2 seasons from now?
No, I can't, and I would never speak for, what's going on at the Moore Center, but, from my point of view, that's what it looks like to me. You have some guys who aren't going to contribute to this upcoming season's team and aren't going to be a factor in the future. And it seems like Norvell's just telling them straight up that, it's time to move on. And it seems like that there's some quiet confidence about what they saw in the spring that would allow them to, have a winning season and make a bowl game. And there's a lot of debate on their staff and their ability to recruit and how they recruit. It comes down to FSU having to win, and it's the same tired argument we've talked about even under Willie Taggart. Florida State's got to get back to winning, and Florida State's a school that's going to recruit by itself when it's a winning program. So my feeling is that he maybe hedging his bet a little bit, creating some space for 2023, because there's a lot of kids that FSU is after, and there's a lot of interest from a lot of good players. And, Dustin and I, talk time to time about, how are they going to fit some of these kids into this class? How are they going to find room when you hear that they lead for or are in the top group for, 3, 4, 5, 6 different players at one position. So my opinion is that he is creating the space needed and thinking or pretty much hedging his bet against himself that he's going to be able to get a bowl season out of this upcoming team. And, whether we like it or not, and maybe this is a whole other topic for debate, what happens if he doesn't make a bowl game this year and they have another losing season? Does he have a future? So I think it comes down to him, this being his third year. This is when coaches are supposed to turn the corner or make that next step. So that's either going to happen or FSU is going to probably be looking for another coach.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
If you look at where the scholarships stand right now, I believe after Green McKnight's transfer, you're sitting at 82 of 85 allocated scholarships, and there's only 8 scholarship seniors on the roster next year, and obviously there will be some guys that declare early to go pro, and we're talking about the transfers. The numbers will find themselves a way to work out, but at the same time, I'm not convinced that an 8-4 season brings instant success on the recruiting trail for Florida State, just because you look at the way the timelines work in recruiting now. Everyone's signing in December on that early signing period. The big guys are anyway, and most guys are committing before that. I mean, a lot of Florida State's top targets are going to be committing between now and probably August or September. So they're going to need to win those recruitments before they get on the field. But then when they get on the field, it's important to play success or, to be successful to keep those guys in the fold. Because we saw Florida State win the offseason last year. They had a bunch of guys committed. Then they start out 0-4, and that recruiting class started dropping like flies. So I think you're going to see a similar thing. Florida State, they're going to build up that class this summer, and it's can you hold on during the fall? And like you said, Nate, really an 8-4 regular season and a bowl game, hopefully a win. That would give Florida State some definite momentum heading into 2023. And you look at that 24 class where Florida State is involved with so many of the guys right up there at the top in the country at this time, and even have some of the top guys committed like Cam Davis. I think 24 is where you're looking at that potential top 10 class if you come off a successful 2022 season.
Yeah, and I don't think 7-5 gets them the return that they want. I think, like you said, it's got to be a 8-4 regular season with a shot at a 9th win from a bowl game. 7-5 does show improvement, no doubt, but in my opinion, it's not enough to land what they need and what they think they can land. So there has to be a big season, man. It's a big season for FSU, this fall.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a big time conversation this whole offseason, because I do think it's make it or break it for Mike Norvell. And you hear so many good signs from inside the program and outside, and that things are going well. And, watching all these practices and being there for a true spring camp, I think Florida State has its coach, but if it ain't working, it ain't working. And, things got to move on there. But, Florida State also doesn't have all the money that maybe other programs do. So this isn't just a thing. All right, let's try this all over again and do this. You don't want to do that. And that's what we aren't. I don't think any of us are expecting that to happen, but there is got to be a line that you've got to go past. And that's got to be 7-8 wins, even if you're adding on the 8 win to be a bowl game, you got to find some kind of momentum there. And definitely, I think if you have an 8-4 season, that is gigantic for Florida State. And you see the momentum happening on the recruiting side. And I don't know. It's going to be a big time conversation. It's going to be a fun season to cover, because I feel like, like I said, I think Norvell kind of knows it, and he felt like this was a good spring, and he could be preparing and playing a crazy kind of chess game with us and preparing for that 2023 season. If he does, that ends up being the case, this is a crazy that's a crazy mofo, man, because he's kind of risking it for a biscuit a little bit. You got to think about it. He's risking it a little bit. These guys aren't pivotal players that we're hearing. They're in the line of starters. These are, behind depth. You're looking at late 2-3, depth pieces. But these are still, some risks on some guys, and the conversations that these exit interviews are going through, they're tough.
And it's crucial that this team is ready earlier in the season, because we saw them come out in 2020, start 0-2 to Georgia Tech and Miami, and then have a battle with Jacksonville State. And we all saw this past season, you come out 0-4. You need to come out week 0, punch Duquesne in the mouth, and then go down to Louisiana, punch LSU in the mouth. You've got to have early success. We've seen this team start to win as the year goes on, but you've got to start out on the right foot to put yourself in position to make the postseason. You can't come out and have these head-scratching games and losses, and then beat North Carolina or beat Miami. you've got to do it from the get-go. Be consistent throughout the season.
And the schedule sets up pretty fairly for Florida State to have success. But I agree, Dustin. I think having early success can change the tone of the season. You're not constantly chasing that first win, then chasing number two. You get a layup in week one before you head to LSU.
It better be a layup. I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it's a layup.
A perceived layup in week one, and then you go to week two, which I think is a winnable game against LSU. So they have to start out well, because this is it, in my opinion, for the staff.
And, I want to go into some just spring position grades before we give the floor to Austin to give us the update on Florida State's new transfer from UCF. I thought we'd just go by position, and I think we kind of did this before the camp started, and I'm wondering if any of y'all's opinions change or not, because I think mine definitely changed, at least offensive line-wise, which I'll go ahead and start off with. Thought we felt pretty good, and it's also we need to understand, too, this is spring, and you've got some youngins in there. This is for some guys, this is second, third year camp, and you're hoping to see some improvement there. And I think you see signs from that, but I see more signs from newer guys. And in my opinion, Caden Lyles just arrived, so I'm not giving him too much. But do I think right now he's a solidified starter over Amarius Smith? No. And I understand that coming from Wisconsin, you're learning the system and such, but this is spring, and I don't think there's much of heavy things being changed. I think that will be more in the fall, still adjusting and getting used to a new system, but they're going through some more simpler things in the spring. I think more of conditioning for Lyles, and I don't know if he could last 2 quarters right now. I think there's got to be a lot more conditioning working on the body, in my opinion. I think he gets a little bit more vulnerable, too, because he's a little bit slower there, where you can use Amarius Smith because he's lighter, but Amarius Smith is really too light for you, so you're kind of in a tough situation. But if Caden Lyles is coming in to start right away, I don't feel so good about that offensive line if that's going to be your starting center right now. And so I think my grade, is probably going into out of the spring right now is a solid C, I think, after spring on my end of things. A lot of question marks.
I'll go C minus, because I believe Lyles was a little bit of a disappointment, which you kind of alluded to, Logan. I think that Florida State, or they hope they had more of an answer at tackle. It seems like the staff wants to put Darius Washington at guard, which I like that. Just the questions at tackle, man. That worries me. With a quarterback that's been injury prone, I still think that it's a work in progress. If a guy like Thomas Schrader can realize, his potential and stay healthy, it's a guy the staff likes. So I'm really interested to see what happens when they get Julian Armella and Kushan Sapp on campus.
Yeah, I'll say C+. I was excited to see the offensive line this spring, and they just didn't live up to expectation. We've already talked about kind of the depth issues. Whenever you lose someone from that top, seven guys, really, you're going to struggle. So Florida State, they've just got to continue working those young guys behind them, the Thomas Schraders, Zane Herrings, Bryson Estes, Lloyd Willis, Rod Orr. Those are the guys that you need to see big signs from over the summer to feel more comfortable about where that unit currently stands. Because we all know football. Someone's going to end up getting hurt. Florida State's going to get a tough break. They're going to lose an offensive tackle or a guard or someone for a couple of weeks, or someone's going to be playing hurt. They need guys behind it. And, I feel like I've said it enough. They need to scour that transfer portal hard. You're not going to be – I've seen some comments about Julian Armella. You're not going to be counting on a true freshman this year. It's not possible. Florida State's done that in the past. They had to play Darius Washington. They had to play Amarius Smith. They had to play Dante Lucas when they were true freshmen. That didn't go so well. So you're not going to be counting on a true freshman. You've got to find someone in that transfer portal. whether it's someone that's strictly a tackle, someone that can flex inside, outside, somebody.
Let's jump over to quarterback here. Just a grade off the top of the head here. I think this is depends. Depth is once again depth, but I'd go B. You know, you've got your solidified starter with Jordan Travis. I thought watching him during the spring, his progression, deep ball. I still think there's still work to be done, most certainly on reads and looking down the field longer. But at least deep ball wise, I thought you saw some strides from Jordan Travis, and we heard during spring scrimmages he was throwing some dots, but wide receivers dropping him. So I'm not going to give that hard time on Jordan Travis. So you got your solidified starter, but I'll be honest, I don't think this was a game-changing spring for Tate Rodemaker, which you were hoping that you'd see some better strides from him. I'll be honest. And I know some other people were thinking that, but I have my own opinion. And after watching Tate Rodemaker from last year practices, not this spring, but the last spring before that, and those spring scrimmages, I didn't see much strides being taken by Tate Rodemaker where, you know, AJ Duffy coming in and still making some plays, still a long ways to go for AJ Duffy too, which that's a true freshman coming in early enrollee. That's what you're expecting, but nothing significant from Tate Rodemaker, in my opinion. That's where, you know, I would put this. I put it at a flat B. It could be a B minus just because I didn't see Tate Rodemaker make some strides. And we also got to understand too, he is a very, very, very good practice player. He's a very, very good 7-on-7. He can throw the ball very far. He can connect with players. But sometimes when it comes to scrimmages or 11-on-11s, which we got to view all of spring camp, we got to see every single practice. Sometimes it's a deer in headlights and we're throwing the ball up. And you don't want to know how Sam McCall, true freshman, is grabbing these interceptions. That ball is kind of just going up there. I just didn't see enough from Rodemaker, in my opinion. So that's why I'm going a flat B there. Could go minus, but I'm going to give it a B.
Yeah, I'll go B minus. You know, you've got your starting guy in Jordan Travis. No one in that room is going to push him for the starting job. He is the solidified starter. The only reason Jordan Travis is leaving the field in a close game is because he's hurt or something. There's no chance for Rodemaker or Duffy to jump Travis in 2022 at any point with what we saw throughout the spring. Travis has continued to come along as a passer. And really for me, on him, it just comes down to staying healthy, protecting his body, making sure that he's continuing to slide in the face of taking big hits because he's missed some time. And his first 2 seasons as a starter cannot afford to miss time in 2022. AJ Duffy at this point still looks like a true freshman. Tate Rodemaker, you said it, Logan. He hasn't come along as far as you would have hoped that he would. A guy going into his 3rd year in the system, one of the first quarterbacks that Mike Norvell signed when he got to Tallahassee. He just hasn't made that progression quite yet. And I would hope that Florida State can get an early blowout against Duquesne and get those guys in there, work them in some live game reps to kind of help them out, because I really feel like that's the only way they're going to grow. They need more time on the field. And Tate Rodemaker's time at Florida State, he was thrown in against Jacksonville State. That didn't go very well. And we saw this past season when he came in against UF, and that didn't go well. So it's the Jordan Travis show, and I'm giving it a B minus because I'm not comfortable with the depth behind it, and I'm interested to see what Florida State's coaching staff, how they decide to navigate the situation. We've talked about the transfer portal. I don't know if there's going to be a legitimate option for Florida State, and they're probably just going to have to roll with what they've got at this point.
Mm-hmm. I just want to mention real quick, Nate, before you get started, to Dupree. He's talking here on YouTube, saying that we're acting like Tate is playing a lot of games. The only reason in hell we're talking about Tate Rodemaker now is because, going back to Jordan Travis, how many times did Jordan Travis have to leave the game last year? Mm-hmm. And pivotal moments in a game, you look back at friggin' the first game against Notre Dame, you've got Mackenzie Milton going in there. That's the reason why we're talking about Tate Rodemaker, Dupree, just to make sure that you're clear on that, because we're not expecting Tate Rodemaker to come in and play over Jordan Travis. but it's definitely worth a damn conversation for a second string guy that has to probably go in because you don't fully have Jordan Travis for a full game for most of it, let alone a whole season. So that's why we're conversating that, just to kind of give you some education there on a fine Thursday, beautiful evening, by the way. Gorgeous weather in Tallahassee this week.
I look at it as an individual basis. I'll give Jordan Travis a B+. I think that he's progressed significantly. And for me to think that, I was one of the ones that was anti-Travis last year. So, I think that he's taken the next step. I think that, AJ Duffy's a freshman, but I think he got better as the spring went, and that's what you can expect from him. So I would give him a C. And Tate Rodemaker, I just can't say anything different than what Logan said. So, for me, that this is an average quarterback room for college. And like Dustin kind of hinted at, I do think that somehow FSU's got to get another experienced scholarship quarterback in this from the portal. They have to, because Duffy's not ready. Tate Rodemaker has shown that he can't do it when the lights are on. And, whether it's right or wrong, we have to just face the fact that there's a likelihood that Travis is going to get hurt at some point, especially if they can address the tackle spot. So this is an average quarterback room for me.
How about running back? I thought this was probably maybe one of your best groups during the spring. Afterwards, looking at it, you saw signs and flashes. Number one from Trey Benson, who was an Oregon transfer that a lot of fans were worried and concerned about, and definitely understandable after getting over that injury and coming in. Florida State evaluated him very well. And once again, you saw him during the spring game, have the flashes there and lead the running back room, 7 carries, 77 yards. But, I think you've got a solidified guy that's probably your number 2 behind Treshaun Ward. That could be a 1-2 punch there, honestly, between Ward and Benson. You've also got Toafili, who I thought had a very, very physical spring, which was much needed from him. They used Toafili quite a bit on goal line too, and scored about a majority of those too, which is impressive from a guy that out of that group is probably your thinnest guy. You've got Rodney Hill, true freshman, coming in, nonetheless. CJ Campbell, true walk-on, has a little bit more size than definitely Toafili. So out of this group overall, you saw really good signs from CJ Campbell, true walk-on, who we heard really, really good things out of that second scrimmage from him. Heard a lot of good things about that second scrimmage, and Norvell was really pleased with him. This room has quite a bit of potential, and I'm going to give this room a B+. It's almost to an A. At least probably leaving spring, I'll give it an A. I gotta find an A. I don't know where else I'm gonna put an A anywhere. So if I'm gonna give an A somewhere, it's going to this running back room.
I agree. I was gonna say A-. I think that Benson was one of the pleasant surprises of camp. He was a gifted running back coming out of Mississippi. Like true elite top end speed. Had that knee injury, and it looks like he's fully healthy. And I think he's going to push Treshaun Ward for that starting spot. You have a guy who is going to be, so let me back a little bit. We're not going to have a 20-plus carry back, I think, in this offense. Norvell likes the committee. I think he has 3 proven guys in Benson, Ward, and Toafili. You mentioned Toafili. He scores because he has great vision. CJ Campbell, he's going to play. He's Treshaun Ward part 2. And then I think Rodney Hill can be a threat in the passing game. I like what they have here. I like the pieces. You don't have a truly elite guy, but you have 3 guys for sure who I think are above average, and Benson, Ward, and Toafili. And then you have a guy like Hill who can be dangerous in the open field in the passing game, and a guy like Campbell who, by all reports, everyone was excited about the defense. A guy who ate that defense up in the scrimmages. So I would definitely go A-.
Yeah, Nate pretty much nailed it. I'm going with an A- as well. 'Cause there was some worry early on, would Florida State be able to find a replacement for Jashawn Corbin in that rotation? And I think they have in Trey Benson. It really seems like Treshaun Ward and Trey Benson are two very capable options for Florida State to continue the pounding rushing attack that they were using last year a lot. And Lawrence Toafili going to get involved as well. And Nate, you said I really like the signs you saw from early enrollee Rodney Hill and CJ Campbell. It wouldn't surprise me if he's on scholarship before the season gets started. Really, the wild card in that room for me is DJ Williams. If he can get back to how he performed at Auburn early in his career, that's just another tool in the shed for Florida State. So you've got 5-6 guys that you can use in a multitude of ways, and I think it'll fit what Mike Norvell wants to implement on that offense when it comes to a by committee rotation.
And if what we saw from the defense is true and holds over, teams that can run the ball well and teams that can play defense really well, they can play winning football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that group, you definitely feel good after the spring leaving from there. And we'll talk a lot more. We'll have so much more time later on in the weeks. We just kind of got to run through these spring camp grades, but we'll have a whole lot more to go by position, I'm sure, throughout the spring and head into the summer. Because this is a pretty big, heavy group, too, kind of like that wide receiver room. So do you keep an eye on maybe potential transfers from here? And that would probably be, like you said, Dustin, just bringing up the name. DJ Williams, does he end up staying in this rotation? If Florida State is able to keep this whole camp here, because you lost Corey Wren too earlier in spring, maybe a group to maybe keep an eye on, because that's a big rotation. Not expecting much from Rodney Hill as a true freshman coming in, but I do think CJ Campbell's going to jump in there and get some rotation. So does that change some things up? We'll most likely be talking a lot more about that. Let's jump over to tight end. I'm giving this room, I don't C- after the spring. Nothing. This room hasn't excited me in 4+ years, maybe since 5, 6. I don't know. Maybe going back to Ryan Izzo. I'll be honest. I think Cam represents Florida State very well, has flashes, and maybe Florida State isn't utilizing him more. But you could tell, Jordan Wilson was starting to click there at the end of the season. You wish you could have him. Could you imagine having him and along with Cam another year? That'd be gigantic. But you don't have that, and you're looking at Wyatt Rector. You still got Preston Daniel, and you're hoping that a guy like maybe Jackson West can get things clicking. You got Carter Boatwright, Marcusson Douglas is still on roster, who's had tiny bits. Yeah, Carter Boatwright is gone. I don't think I said his name.
You just did.
I said Carter Boatwright?
Yeah.
I meant to say Jackson West. Yeah, Jake. I meant to say, did I say Jackson West? No. I'm thinking, God, who am I thinking? Oh, my God. Yeah, let me struggle here.
Embarrassing on live for you, huh?
Yeah, hold up.
You're going to cut this out of the actual podcast?
Brian Courtney. Dadgummit. Brian Courtney. Golly, I got those two messed up. Dang it. But, yeah, Florida State. This is probably why I don't like this room a lot the last couple of years. So I'm going C-. I don't even know all of the names fully, even though I had it in my head earlier. Someone had it in the comments about Brian Courtney. But I'm not expecting Brian Courtney to be a guy that comes into the rotation early. I don't think Florida State is a threat. If I'm going into a game right now, I'm not giving a shit about the tight end room. Sorry. That was kind of harsh there. I feel bad. Cam, I love you. I just wish maybe it's more targets for you, maybe more things for it to work in the scheme. But if I'm a team right now, that's not a threat to me.
Are we giving, our true heartfelt grades? Or are we trying to keep it positive for the viewers and
give it true? People here want it true on Here the Sphere. We don't try to cushion anything.
I think it's a D.
I'm not far away from that.
I was going to say D.
You have Cam, who's your only proven commodity. Wyatt Rector has played, like I said earlier, spot duty. You have Preston Daniel, who's a blocker. You have Marcusson Douglas, who is a blocker. Brian Courtney, again, struggled this spring. Jackson West, disappointed. Jackson West, Jackson West is your prototypical tight end. He's 6'4", 240, runs like a deer, but he had the drop seeds. He had a ton of drops this spring. Got a little that concentration part. For me, this is not a room that can help this team after camp, and for me, there's just a lot of question marks. I would even consider hitting the portal for another tight end, see what's out there, because you need some talent, man. I know it doesn't help this year, but like a guy like Randy Pittman that's coming in, hopefully, is going to help that room significantly, because that kid is a player. But for me, this room is a D. Very, very disappointing room for the spring for me.
Yeah, this is my worst graded position group as well, Nate. I'm going with a D, and you feel decent with what you have at the top with Cam McDonald, but then after that, it's just where do you go? I mean, who can you rely on? Wyatt Rector hit impressive spring, but in his college career, he's got 2 catches for 13 yards. So outside of Cam McDonald, who doesn't have even 600 yards of receiving in 3 years, just a lot of different things have happened in that tight end room. There's not much there, and we've seen some departures: Kobe Gross, Carter Boatwright, but I mean, it's kind of bleak right now. Like you said earlier, Logan, you would love to have a Jordan Wilson right now, because he would really make you feel a lot comfortable alongside Cam McDonald as more of that blocking threat, whereas Cam McDonald's more of the receiver. So I think Florida State, you've got to look at that portal and see if there's some type of grad transfer option that you can bring in to shore things up, because right now I don't know if Cam McDonald, Wyatt Rector, and Preston Daniel are going to cut it. And unless Jackson West picks it up and starts showing flashes, or the light turns on for Marcus and Douglas, I don't know that you're going to see very much production from that room with how it looked during the spring. I don't think you get a lot from Brian Courtney and Darrell Powers, true freshmen. Maybe they can contribute as their career goes on, but it's probably not going to be in 2022. So D for me.
You can argue that Jordan Wilson was the best tight end on the roster last year.
I agree.
No, room is not so bueno heading into 2022. We'll see if the transfer portal comes in to help. Let's talk to wide receiver real quick. What are our thoughts after this? Pretty big spring camp. We talked about it a ton, because this was going to be very, very heavily competitive. And you've got transfers that have came in like Micah Pittman and Johnny Wilson, who had big time flashes in the spring. You wish that, Johnny Wilson maybe caught those balls in the spring game. Hopefully those can be fixed. But you saw some really good flashes from them the spring camp, and you didn't get to see Winston Wright yet, because obviously a really tough, tragic car crash had put him definitely sidelined for the rest of his camp, and he was really limited to start off camp. And then you look at Deuce, who's still a limited guy, who's not really limited. He's actually a developmental and a project player, and I saw a little bit there, but you definitely saw potential big time playing time, potential starting playing time for a guy like Micah Pittman and Johnny Wilson. And how is this going to change up things for Keyshawn Hill and Portier? You got Williamson there. Malik McLean is a solidified starter heading into 22. I think this room is a solid B heading into after spring, in my opinion. Which I think going into, for me, I think I was around that B minus C, because I had to have answers. I had no idea that Johnny Wilson, that was a surprise guy for me. I was not expecting, even Micah, I wasn't saying this was going to be a big guy that would make those contested catches, be a threat in the end zone there. And I think he shocked a lot of us there, a lot of the media there, about how he performed. And Johnny Wilson, by far, yes, that was a shocker. But this was a better grade coming out of the spring for me.
I think B's a good grade for the unit, and I mean it's an improvement over what we saw in 2021. And I think it just comes down to, you mentioned those top 3 transfers coming in, and Pittman, Johnny Wilson, and Winston Wright, who hopefully he can return to full health around fall camp or so and contribute in the 2022 season. A lot of expectations on those three, and just Malik McClain moving into a sophomore year, Joshua Burrell back healthy after that lower body injury a season ago. There's some guys that can contribute for Florida State, as well as Ontario Wilson and Keyshawn Helton. I think you've got 6, 7, 8 guys that you feel comfortable throwing out there, and it's an improved core from last year than what Jordan Travis was throwing to in 2021, and it's just big throughout these next 4 months. Organizing those player runs, 7-on-7s, getting out there, getting as many reps as possible. And Winston Wright continuing to progress because he could be a game changer for that wide receiver unit. We didn't even get to see him in the spring. And you talked about Jordan Travis's progression with the deep ball. I mean, imagine when that guy's back and he's throwing to someone with that type of speed. But I think the best is yet to come for these wide receivers. They were still kind of getting into the groove of things throughout these 15 spring practices. And I saw some potential for an improvement in the passing game throughout 2022.
For me, I had this unit as a D heading into this spring. There was a lot of question marks, man. The leading receiver had less than 400 yards catching last year. This was a legitimate question mark. So I think coming out of spring, I too put it as a B. I think that, it seems like Travis has a pretty good connection with Wilson already. He needs to catch the ball. I agree with Logan. I think what was surprising was how flexible and how explosive and how shifty Wilson is at that size. And one thing that I don't think no one's really said it was these three guys. I look at two guys in particular. I look at Ontario Wilson and I look at Keyshawn Portier, who took that as motivation and stepped their game up this spring. You constantly heard and saw Keyshawn making tough catches on the sideline. And Wilson is just that old dog that won't go away. Just really isn't going to blow you away with elite athleticism, but he's going to be Mr. Dependable. So I think he's going to play. And I like Josh Burrell. I think him in the slot could be a mismatch, especially in the red zone. I do like the idea of putting him at tight end. He's going to be a guy you can create mismatches in different sets because he's super strong. He runs really good routes, and he catches everything. And that's what this team needs. So I like what I saw coming out of spring. If Winston Wright comes back healthy, I think that you have a unit that's going to really help this offense. And, we talk about the running game that has been really solid under Mike Norvell. Could take the next step if the passing game can open up.
Let's jump over to defense real quick, and we'll move a little bit quicker through these. But where do we want to start? DN? I guess we'll work DN, work on the inside. I give this room. I feel a lot better. I feel a lot better after the spring. So I think everybody does on here. I'm going to give this group with Pat Payton making the moves and developing well. I'm giving a B+. I think a B+ here, and it's close to an A in my opinion because I think you've got 3 potential starters on that defensive end group, which before heading into it, I wasn't really fully feeling that. But number one, Jared Verse is Jared Verse. I think he's going to have a pretty good year for Florida State in 2022. And the way that he was dominating Florida State's offensive line, kind of like how Jermaine Johnson did last fall, just told me enough about what we're probably going to see. And you got Derek McGlendon, who has worked on his body a big time with Coach Storms. And he talked about that after one of the practices in the latter half of spring, saying that, he really feels like he can be one of the top defensive end players, not only in the conference, in the state, but in the country as a whole. And, we were very high. I think this whole group is very high on Derek McGlendon. And we saw flashes of him wearing that 55 on the inside whenever he was working on the interior defensive line group. And the way that he has reshaped his body, he's thinner than Jared Verse is. And that's crazy to think of from a guy that was working on the interior whenever starting off his career at Florida State. And so you got Derek McGlennon. You're hoping to have Dennis Briggs back fully. He was limited a little bit this spring camp. You see the upsides if you have Quashon Fuller right now, along with Pat Payton, who, Nate, you're very high on him. And I was glad to send you a few texts saying Pat Payton's putting on a show today. And we also got to hear it from sources of them at the spring scrimmages of him making some plays, and got to see it firsthand, who I think the biggest thing for him was putting on size and gaining confidence. And I think that those two things happened for him, for him this spring. So B+, I want to give it an A, but B+, A, B+.
I'm going A-.
Okay.
I like the room a lot. One of my crazy predictions was Verse not starting. I think he proved.
No, you said Verse third string.
No.
Yeah.
I said he wasn't starting.
Pull that shit up.
VZ,
run it back.
Here with the facts.
He said it first third string.
Oh my God, I can hear.
He did say it first third string, and then he came around on it.
Yeah, so
he came around on it.
The thing that excites me, like I said before, I said it a couple weeks ago, was I like his mean streak, man. I'm surprised by that. I think that you have him, you have Briggs, who's going to play a lot. He can play inside and outside. Derek McClendon had just as good of a spring as Verse. I think those are your two starters. You have Patrick Payton, who worked on his body all last year. In my opinion, is maybe the most natural pass rusher, and he's going to play. There's your two deep right there, and then you have a Quashon Fuller. Who knows what happens with him, but he's progressing like you want. We haven't talked about, Dante Anderson, probably going to redshirt, but he showed a lot this spring for a guy who was a walk-on early enrollee. And then you got Byron Turner, who the coaches like a lot, coming off the shoulder injury. So there's a lot of guys to like, and I feel really, really good about this position group.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure if we mentioned Leonard Warner, who's also back and could contribute on the edge for Florida State. I'm sticking with you, Logan. I'm going with a B+ as well. Really love those signs that you saw from Verse, making that transition from FCS to FBS and not even blinking from the time he arrived in Tallahassee to now. I mean, he's just continued to dominate. And by the end of that spring, you really saw that the passion that he was playing with was on display with the rest of that defense. They were buying into what he was doing, and there were some very physical practices, guys getting after one another. And, he's going to be a problem on that defense. I think he's going to create some things outside of plays for Florida State during the fall. I think he'll draw some penalties, piss some people off, draw some personal fouls. He's going to be very useful. Obviously, we all know what Dennis Briggs is. As long as he can stay healthy, I think he'll be a stalwart for Florida State, switching back to the outside. Derek McClendon is a big surprise, and just want to continue to see him and progress.
No, he's not. I told you.
I didn't think he was a surprise to me.
Just the way that he attacked the off-season conditioning program, and his body has continued to develop. Yeah. He just looks like a completely different player, and he's also found that confidence factor as well that I think maybe escaped him a little bit early on. And you can see him, the light has turned on. And we mentioned Pat Payton, Leonard Warner. So really you've got four guys I think that are viable options to start, and then 6 or 7 that could be in the rotation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and you saw the signs like Nate was saying. Dante Anderson, that's a guy that's not going to be a pivotal factor, but if just going through guys that are back there in the depth chart, you see those small signs, and Dante put on some size too. What Coach Storms is doing with some of these guys, and with Byron Turner, definitely Pat Payton, and most certainly Dante. Dante has a nasty punch, and like y'all were saying, like you were saying, Dustin, you got to hope the biggest thing for probably Verse is probably calming him down, because I don't know. You got to calming him down. You kind of have that Timmy Jernigan kind of vibe where you just got to calm it down just a tad. You're going to do your thing. But he's a guy that I thought condition-wise is making plays first down, second down, third down, fourth down. He did that all through red zone drills this entire spring. And that's a guy that I think I'll probably have to give it an A. If since I was so high and talking so high, there's no way I can give the defensive end group anywhere below an A if I've been so high on Jared Verse. So I can't ride that wave.
Real question, Logan.
Yeah.
When it's all said and done, who are you going to love more, Jared Verse or Timmy Jernigan?
No, it's going to be hard to get rid of Timmy Jernigan's cutout that's in my bathroom. That's going to be a little weird and tough to.
That's weird right there.
Well, it is tough. It is tough, and I keep saying it publicly, and nobody.
You just stare Timmy in the eyes whenever you're doing.
When I go pee, yeah, I just see what excellence looks like.
Oh God!
I look what excellence looks like, and that's what I do. It's going to be tough, though. I do like
let's
Verse.
Move on to the inside. It's going to get weird here.
Let's get to the inside.
Well, real quick, last thing on defensive ends. I just want to. They're not going to have the 1-2 punch that you had this year with Jermaine Johnson and Keir Thomas, but I think you might end up having a better rotation overall, if that makes sense. You're not going to have the same quality of starters, but depth-wise, out to that 4 to 6 man, you're going to have more guys capable of making an impact when they do sub in for the starters.
And I don't mean to sound bad when I say this, but last year the guy that came in was Marcus Cushney, and you had significant drop off after Jermaine or Keir needed a break. You went to Marcus Cushney. We know how that played out. The guy had 1 tackle on the season.
Where's he at, Nate?
UMass.
Damn, I'm surprised you knew that.
There's this interesting group tonight. We officially hit. We're not in the dry off season yet, but we've got an interesting group on YouTube tonight, I should say. Let's jump into the interior defensive line, which real quickly, I'm giving this one an A+. I've got 4 starters on defensive interior with starting off Robert Cooper, Fabian Lovett. This was the strongest group out of the spring. Fabian Lovett, Robert Cooper, Malcolm Ray, Jared Jackson, Joshua Farmer. Those could be 5 potential starters. I still need to see more from Farmer, but I mean the size difference that he put on, and some of the punches, and goddamn, that's a big boy coming through the middle, along with those other 4. And I was really kind of shocked by the strides that we saw and the maturity that was growing between Bishop Thomas and Daniel Lyons. I think Bishop's a little bit more ahead, but that doesn't really matter that much. If you've got these 4 guys and a potential 5 with Joshua Farmer getting in there, you feel really, really good about this group. So I'm going A+.
I go solid A. Nothing that I can really say different. I think Florida State's front line is going to be one of the best in the conference. I feel really good about Lovett, Cooper, Jackson, and Farmer, who I think is going to play. Malcolm Ray, really like him a lot. They have the depth, and they have guys that can have some interchange, some versatility. I'm going A. As long as everyone stays healthy, you have a front 4 that's going to create some havoc.
Yeah, I'm a hard grader, so I can't go with an A+, but I will go with an A, and I agree with you, Logan. This is Florida State's strongest position group throughout the spring, and I said it a couple weeks ago, but this is the unit that is going to be the backbone of this team and this defense in 2022. I mean, really, any 4 of those guys, you would feel comfortable if they were starting. If Fabian Lovett and Robert Cooper weren't here, I don't think anyone would have any qualms about Malcolm Ray or Jared Jackson stepping into those roles. And I mentioned it before, but that injury to Dennis Briggs last year, it kind of became pivotal for Florida State because it gave those guys a chance to develop. And now you've got 4 bona fide monsters back there. We'll see what Joshua Farmer and some of those other younger guys do. But as long as those top 4 stay healthy, I mean, you're feeling excellent about the interior of that defensive line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're feeling really good. And I got to say, I got to give props. Probably a guy, I already know what I've got with Lovett and Cooper, but I got to give my props to Jared Jackson. I thought he had, out of that defensive line group, I thought he had a really, really good spring. And I'm excited for him heading into 2022. And you got to like that. And you saw the really good flashes from Malcolm Ray too, but I could keep on talking about defensive line. This group just ran the spring. And, I think Adam Fuller, Coach Odell Higgins, gotta love Coach Higgins. I spent a lot of time watching O-line and D-line. They'll have a lot of 3v3 battles, and then they'll have one-on-ones. And, that's a fun group to watch. Odell Higgins versus Coach Atkins. I'll tell you, that's where you get your popcorn out, and got to see those guys develop. And, I think that group with that defensive line and that first string offensive line and those guys battling it can only help that offensive line. But you can tell that it's just a different level. They're on a different level. Let's jump over to linebackers real quick. Grades here. What do you got, D-Lou? How are you feeling after the spring? Some question marks. You got some guys in the transfer portal, but nothing too pivotal yet. How we feeling on this group? Because this was another question mark heading into the spring, as usual.
Yeah, I didn't hate the linebackers last year. I just thought outside of Amari Gaynor, it was a younger unit, and we saw those flashes from Kalen DeLoach and DJ Lundy as the season went on. And we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier when we were talking about Green McKnight transferring, but I feel pretty comfortable with where the unit stands at this time, particularly with Florida State's style of defense. You're only going to have two guys on the field the majority of situations, and Tatum Bethune, Kalen DeLoach, they can hold down the top of that rotation, and Amari Gaynor, DJ Lundy, Omar Graham Jr., maybe Steven Dix Jr., going to be pretty heavily involved, I think, as well. And Florida State, they've got a lot of options. They've got guys that are better at stopping the run. They've got guys like Amari Gaynor who are better rushing the passer. So it's going to be a little interesting. And I think the change from Randy Shannon to Chris Marv is going to pay off as well, because we all know that Randy Shannon has been doing this successfully for over 2 decades throughout the state of Florida, and he's coached Tatum Bethune before. So I'm interested to see kind of how that change plays out, and if these linebackers continue to show the signs that we saw this spring. Because if so, you're gonna feel comfortable with where things stand in the fall. Did I say B minus? B minus.
I'm in the B minus. I'm right at 80%.
B minus.
Because I do think Tatum Bethune lifts this room up significantly. I think that Kalen DeLoach's progress last year was one of the top 2 to 3 surprises of the whole team last year. DJ Lundy dropping weight, looked a lot better in pass coverage. That's going to help him out. Feel really good about Amari Gaynor. He's still a little bit of an enigma. Doesn't really necessarily have a home, but he can be used in a lot of different positions. So I think you have 4 guys you like. And as we said earlier, when you're playing only 2 linebackers, you have a solid 2 deep. If Dix can, on the hoof, Dix looks like $1 million. We can all agree, in the gym,
yeah,
he's the man. Played early and played a lot as a freshman and shows some potential, but we really haven't seen a lot of progress. So if FSU can get some growth out of him, that helps this unit significantly. And I'm putting a little asterisk next to Brendan Gant, because I still think that that's someone that can help that unit. There's not a lot of guys that have his physicality. He can cover in space, in that 15-yard range. And I have my eye on him because I think he can help that unit too. So I'm not excited enough to give it a solid B, but I do think it's a little bit above an average group. So that's not why I have B minus.
B minus. Now, I won't say any more. Y'all kind of touched on everything. I will mention Lundy in the spring. This in the spring looked really, really good in coverage, and that's where I think it puts a tough spot for Steven Dix Jr. And we'll see. Steven Dix Jr. still had great signs, but Lundy, I thought, is still a step ahead, and so we'll see if that affects Steven Dix Jr. there. But I'm gonna give it a B minus heading out of the spring.
Yeah, and I talked a little bit about it in predicted depth chart piece, but DJ Lundy's the best run stuffer this unit has. His instincts are really good. He's a thumper, so he's gonna play. And the fact that he improved in the passing game, that bodes well for him because he played a lot last year. and he's going to be dependent on this year too. So.
Let's jump over to defensive back. Let's just start off on like corner side, and maybe we'll run over to safety. Or we just do it overall defensive back room. But I think Florida State, at least in the cornerback, we'll start there. You see Greedy Vance getting a lot of early playing time. You've got guys, as we expected, Marion Cooper to jump in and get play time. That might be your solidified starter on one side, and you're still looking at maybe who's going to be number 2. But you see Renardo Green at the latter half of spring, once he was fully healthy, getting into that early rotation and being a starter. I'm going to give this room I still want to see more from them, and it's hard to grade from a spring. I mean, it was a really good battles between them and wide receivers. I'm going to give it a B. I'll give it a flat B out of that corner room. I still want to see more, and I think for this, it's a little bit harder to tell because they're facing the same guy over and over and over again. And I'd like to see an actual game happen, but that doesn't happen. We only get a spring game, but I'm going to give this room a B, flat B, after the spring.
Is this just corner?
Strictly corner, yep.
It's iffy. You want to go, Dustin, or you want me to
go? You can go.
It's a tough.
I'm going B plus, man. I like this room. I feel Marion Cooper is going to make a jump. I think that he's going to contend for, all ACC. I think that
they put it down. Bold predictions.
Yep. I think that Renardo Green, he's a guy I've always liked. He started as a freshman, battled some injuries, and looked really good this spring. So I think those are your 2 starting corners. Really like the 2 youngins, but you even have Kevin Knowles that plays some outside this spring, working on different packages. The development of Damori Tate, if that can continue, is going to help this unit. Darin Jones is a veteran. He can come in and play some spot duty, but I do think his time as a starter is over at Florida State. I think he's been passed. I think it's a young room, no doubt, but I think it's a talented room, and there's some really good pieces to work with. I really like the combination of Green and Cooper. I feel very good about this unit heading out of spring.
Yeah, I agree. I'll have to go with an A- for the cornerbacks. Really impressed with the continued progress from Kevin Knowles and Amarius Cooper, and the resurgence of Renardo Green. Man, it's been impressive to watch. Dating back to seeing him at Tour of Duty, and he continued it throughout the entire spring. And I think he's going to be a real difference maker in the defensive backfield as long as he can stay healthy, and he can switch between that natural cornerback spot and also the nickel back. So we'll just have to see how Florida State uses him in that defense. And bringing in Greedy Vance, that's a solid addition as well, and also the true freshman. And like Nate, I think maybe it's a little concerning that most of these guys are still relatively early in their college career, but at the same time, you saw what Kevin Knowles and Amarius Cooper did last year as true freshmen. They came in, they stepped up, and they made an impact on that defense, and I think it's only going to continue. And Greedy Vance, same thing at Louisville. He was pretty impressive over there, and he should be a solid addition. Maybe losing Jarvis Brownlee hurts a little bit when it comes to run support, but I'm confident that these young, tenacious defensive backs, you look over at Sam McCall and Azari Thomas and the way they competed this offseason, the mindset that seems to be on their shoulders. These guys are ready to come in and punch you in the mouth. So regardless of the youth, I think they're ready to step up and compete and prove that Florida State's defensive backfield is primed to make a resurgence.
We've seen it at Florida State, and we see it across the country that I think corner is definitely a spot where guys can come in and play early and make impacts early. It's a hard spot, don't get me wrong. I think I think corner is one of the hardest spots in football, but I think that Florida State has to follow up what Dustin was saying, man, McCall and Thomas have lived up to the billing, I think, which makes you feel really good about this run.
Yep. Got into some early rotation too. Not talking starting rotation, but got into some second deep and such
and
that we were able to report on.
And that first practice we saw, they were like 4th on the depth chart.
Yeah.
They've climbed up and they've earned their spot.
Yeah. So first, you usually have first and second string in the IPF, and when the media is there, we're able to report on those kind of things. But starting out the spring, they put out the 3rd, 4th stringers out in the outside portion of the practice field, and they ran their own 11-on-11s to start off the practice. But started to see those two started creeping into the IPF, and then later on throughout the camp, they were given opportunities in the twos with the AT and Sam McCall, and that is great. And I think Norvell just spoke highly about him. He got asked all kinds of questions about those two, but the future there at Florida State DBU, it kind of will continue on, I think, with Sam McCall and Azare Thomas. Those are some two guys that you feel really good about and in the future of their corner positions.
And Jarian Jones better watch out, because he is in danger territory right now of these young guys just completely passing him up in the rotation. So, you need to see some signs from him.
Yep. And you saw flashes from Tate too this spring. So we'll see what ends up happening. I wondered in the comment here, that's his actual name, for I know the podcast listeners are probably wondering what the hell I'm talking about, but I wonder from YouTube is asking, who are the best tackling DBs? We're probably getting to them right now. Jamie Robinson and Keem Dent, those two guys seem to have just killed
Renardo Green.
Yeah, Renardo Green. But specifically now going over to just the safety room, I'm giving this grade an A heading out of spring. I think you've got some solidified starters there with Keem Dent, who had maybe out of that whole entire DB room the best spring camp out of anyone. And I know there was some talk or chirps. I don't know. It was over the weekend. And I'll be honest, I was there kind of on a vacation and feeling things out of maybe a potential moving spot. So I was not really on my phone as much. And yeah, of course I was drinking. There was things that were going on, and I was enjoying myself just to have a couple of days off. And I saw this Keem Dent stuff, and that would have been shocking to me. I was in St. Pete.
So you were in St. Pete. You didn't tell me.
That's probably why right there.
St. Pete is literally like 15 minutes from my house.
Do you know that I'm about to be down there a lot this fall, so I'll be coming to see you a ton.
Well,
for all these
I don't
Bucks
want to
games.
see you on a permanent basis. Once every 6 months is fine, but
your face does look a little scared. I'm coming over for family dinner, baby.
You're more than welcome.
Oh, I'll come
You're
over.
more than welcome. I can sling it on the grill, bro. Whatever you want.
Dustin's looking weird. He's sad he didn't get invited. That's all it is.
I got sweet tea for you, Dustin.
Ooh.
Now he's
excited. Now he's excited.
But back to what's important.
Back to what's important, though, the safety room. I'm giving this room an A. I knew what I got with Sidney Williams. I know what I got with Keem Dent. And most certainly Jamie Robinson, who killed it with his ladder. He was a little limited this spring camp, but looked really, really good at the end of it all. And this is what you get with Jamie, and you're so glad to have him back. I think that might be the player that, there's a lot of them, definitely on the defensive line and some other groups that you're glad that some of those players came back. But Jamie Robinson is going to be huge for Florida State in 2022. I'm giving this room an A.
I'm giving it an A too. I think you have 4 guys who can start. I think Jamie Robinson is the alpha of the defense. Akeem Dent, phenomenal spring. He settled into that safety spot. You have Sidney Williams, who can play both safety spots, who's been a starter. Really like what he brings to the table. Shaheem Brown another guy had a really good spring, who could also be a starter. And one guy we haven't talked about, disappointingly, is Travis Jay, who coming out of the camp is third string. For me, it's a guy I've always been high on. Just a naturally gifted football player, but it just hasn't clicked. So, that's someone to watch. But you look at that safety room, you could even slide Thomas and or McCall back there if you wanted to and still have a really solid unit. So I really like that room. I'm going A.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I mean, safety's one of the strongest positions on this team, and I'm gonna have to say A as well, not to stick with the same grade, but Jamie Robinson, Akeem Dent, they're going to be excellent for Florida State as that probably starting safety tandem. To have Robinson back, a guy who led you in tackles last year and really became one of the leaders on that defense down the stretch.
Conference.
I think it's huge. You know, this is his money year. He's playing for prime draft position, and I think he's probably going to have a better year than last year. And same thing with Akeem Dent.
Let me ask you this real quick, Dustin. Sorry to cut you off. Do you think it's unrealistic to talk about Robinson being an All-American type player coming off All ACC?
I mean, he's got to be in the conversation, especially with how he performed last year and how he's continuing to progress.
Mm-hmm.
Such a big factor in the run game defense too. Major factor.
I don't think he's a preseason All-American, but he can play himself onto that list with another tremendous 2022 campaign.
And Timmy's right here. I mean, not to just end off the safety talk, but Timmy's right. I mean, this defense dominated the spring, and not just only dominated because offense was awful, but this is showing a really good sign for Florida State. If you're relying on one side of the ball, we'll talk about this whole offseason because we'll have nothing else to talk about. But if you're going to rely on one side of the ball heading into 2022, it's going to be that defense right now. The way that all sides are kind of clicking and you got the strong defensive line, that just kind of goes in into a role that could be has a chance to be really strong here in the ACC and could be a big time pivotal factor. It's just a big thing of consistency. Can they keep the consistency? Has always been the struggle for Florida State the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, really, the defensive backfield as a whole, you've got to feel pretty comfortable about. Cornerbacks, that's where the most of your youth is, but you look at the safety unit, and you've got a ton of experience there. I mentioned Robinson and Dent, but even behind that, Sidney Williams, he's played heavily for Florida State the last 2 years, and he was excellent last year next to Jamie Robinson before he got hurt, and Jarquez McClellan as well has contributed throughout his career at Arkansas, and then since he got to Florida State has been in that rotation. So from top to bottom in that defensive backfield, you probably feel a lot more comfortable than you have over the past couple of years when we've seen a lot of miscues there, especially the fact that pretty much all of these guys played together and developed chemistry with one another last season, and you should only expect a stronger performance overall, I think, in 2022.
It's going to be really exciting watching this secondary versus, Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State in the playoff.
You're muted, bro.
God dang it, I was saying some crazy awesome stuff that would get me elected into like freaking CBS Sports NFL countdown. Dang it. I was saying some good stuff there, but I was just going to say that. That's going to be awesome, Nate. I can't wait to be there in the press room with you because if Florida State ends up winning a playoff game or anything of that nature, definitely making it to a national championship, Nate's going to like yell like a motherfucker. It's going to be hard for any kind of FSU beat person to be quiet during that, but I couldn't even imagine Pasadena. Good God. But yeah, that will recap our grades on the spring. That officially wraps up everything. We'll still have
about
conversation.
Special teams?
That's right. And that reminds me, I need to make sure I apologize for that. Special teams as a whole, this is so hard to grade because nobody's hitting a thing. So kickers, give me B minus. B minus on the kickers. Give me a B plus for punter, and give me. I know your biggest.
You couldn't have just done an overall grade.
No, I'm going specifics here.
Well, then I'm gonna need punt team, kickoff return.
Oh no! C. Give me a C. After what we saw last season, it's hard to evaluate this in the spring. So give me a C. I'm going off of last year.
That is not for me.
What did you say?
It's below average until I see that it's not. So
C. Yes, I'm giving it a C.
Below
from last
average.
Year.
Below average is a D.
Yeah. I think it will be different with Micah, but as we watch the spring scrimmage, they're kicking it to somebody, and there's no one near them at all, and they just catch it and run 5 yards and pat on the back. So give me a C.
Florida State fans be confident in their field goal kicking team?
Not different than last year. Not different than last year. Not fully.
That's all I need to hear.
There you go. That's what the people want. That's what the people wanted to hear. That's why we saved it for the last bit of the football part of things here. Because we get
from down under. How's he looking?
The Pout, a lot of high kicks. They're, when we're in the Dick Hauser watching it, they do go definitely high up there, and really good elevation on those kicks from the punter from, say it, Dustin.
The punter from down under. What about the long snapper battle? Who's pulled ahead in this thrilling competition?
I'll be honest.
We got Garrett Murray or James Bradbury. Why is that
looking
funny?
good? That's gonna be something. That'd be like a Tyson Fury / Wilder fight. That is a battle that we won't be able to see until the lights kick on against Duquesne in week 0.
Yeah, it's a tough one to break down. Garrett Murray being a homegrown talent, and you brought in Bradbury from the transfer portal, and he locked down the job last year. But I'd be interested to see if Murray can get a leg up on the competition. He got 4 months now, and I'm sure he's going to be working on that snapping time. He's got it down to 0.16 seconds, and if he can get it to around a 0.1, you're feeling really good heading into August. So keep your eyes on long snappers. Underrated unit.
Bang. There we go. There's the analysis there from Dustin. That's why we have him on the show weekly.
You only notice them when they mess up. So
that's right.
Don't mess
up. Shout out to Lady Knowles as the comments are going crazy. I believe just defeated Clemson 5.
Walked off against Clemson.
Walk off against Clemson.
They walked off the field like during the game.
And this is why we're not
boycotting the game.
No.
No. I don't watch the bat sport, so I'm
baseball.
I don't either. To be fair.
We can't be wrong though. Whenever like College World Series, when College World Series comes around, though, I'm fully invested in that. Right now, let me get some time. Then we got a good softball team. Let me get some time. But let me get to a little bit of the postseason. I'll dial in. I promise I'll dial in. Now that spring's over, I'm dialing into softball. I promise. I'm dialing in. Now I'm going to give y'all updates. I'm giving y'all updates now every week. I'm going to give y'all updates every week now that spring's over. I'm going to dial in.
You want to know my thoughts on softball?
Now, is this something that will get us canceled or no?
Hopefully they're better than baseball.
Oh, my gosh. Well, baseball's on a run right now.
To where?
No,
see, we've got it. I should have never brought up any kind of other sport.
I'm not going to go there.
No.
Austin knows where I'm going to go.
Yeah, we're done. Let's move it on to a sport that we all know and love after we forgot what happened in 2021.
Don't be sarcastic.
I forgot what happened last year. I thought we all did. I thought you said that's what you forgot. Let me bring your name up here again, as everybody knows. Forgot 2021 basketball season, Austin Beasy.
Yeah.
But we got to say, though, Florida State did land some help there out of the transfer portal, and that is going to be Mr. Darin Green Jr. from UCF. He's coming off of, and I wrote this down on my own. He's coming He's coming off of a season averaging 13.3 points per game while shooting 38.5% from the three on a 7.8 3-point attempt per game.
You can tell he's reading off a page.
If anyone read my article after Green committed, it might sound a little bit familiar.
Yeah, but I'm not done yet. For comparison, going back to those numbers, for comparison,
literally
no one
word for word.
The one person that read Austin's article that's watching this show they are angry at you, Logan, for plagiarizing.
The one person? Oh, that is mean, Dustin. We had a good amount of views.
It's Austin himself.
Yeah,
I read it, Austin. Austin, I read all your articles, man. I appreciate
That is
it.
total bullshit. That is so BS. That is total BS.
That is not. I read everyone's article that posts from No Game Day.
Take the cap off. Anyways, I'm not done with what I wrote down in my notes.
Great job, Austin. Great job, Austin.
For comparison, no one at Florida State has shot more than 5.5 3-point attempts in the last 10 years, and 7.8 3-point attempts would be the most since Tim Pickett in the early 2000s.
Who's Tim Pickett, Logan?
Be honest. Is that the first time you've heard the name Tim Pickett?
That's not Pickett, the wide receiver from Georgia, right?
No, that's Pickens. Pickens.
Oh, Pickens. There we go. Yeah. No, I don't know who Pickett is. Pickett in the NFL draft.
Oh my god.
No, I don't know Pickett from UCF.
Someone wanted to shoot me and put me out of my misery.
It's not Pickett from UCF.
Oh, he's from
bro.
FSU. Oh, he's from FSU. My bad. I'm getting there. I was gone over the weekend. I would have read all into Austin's piece. And I didn't do it. I didn't edit it.
Dude, we posted Austin's piece on like Tuesday.
Well, I was getting
comment.
I was getting ready for my trip. Okay, I'm dialing. I'm going to get back into basketball when it gets closer. So, VZ, give us the latest because we do have some basketball freaks in here in the comments. So, we do need to educate them on Florida State's new grad transfer.
Yeah. So while football, swung and missed on the transfer they wanted over the weekend, basketball got theirs. In Darin Green Jr. Green's a phenomenal player.
All right, Austin, I lied. Your articles suck.
Unreal.
This is a guy the basketball team has been missing really since PJ Savoy. But Savoy didn't have the off the dribble threat that Darin Green does. I mean, a guy that can put up this kind of shots in this kind of volume, something Florida State's really never had. It's going to be really interesting to see how he does in this offense, really in this system, because he's not that much of a defensive player, but he's got decent enough size and athleticism. But finally, we have someone that can shoot. The FSU really struggled with that last season. They just could not shoot. And now you have a guy that can shoot about 40% on 8 attempts per game. That's a guy that's going to be a threat. And to take a guy that was the best player on a team that was, middle of the road in the American Conference, which was a pretty good American Conference this year, you get the best player from that team to bring him on to Florida State. I think that's a win all the way around. Really excited about this. I thought he was going to take more visits, but no, took the one at Florida State and committed pretty much right away on Monday afternoon.
So is this a guy that comes in early into the rotation? That's probably what most us
100%.
fans are wondering.
Yeah, he's a three-year player, started pretty much every game in his career at UCF. Fans the diehards will remember him lighting up Florida State for 20 points in that embarrassing home loss to UCF 2 years ago.
I remember that.
He could not miss that game. He just could not miss. Was hitting from all over the floor. Was hitting from Chipley, Orlando, Jacksonville, just hitting from everywhere. I think this is a great pickup and something Florida State desperately needs. They've really addressed the weaknesses this offseason. They've got some shooting with Darin Green. They got some rebounding and shot blocking with Jalen Gainey. And they're still going after Norshad Omier, who seems like he had a really good visit this week. I know he's visiting Georgetown, I think this weekend, and then Texas Tech the following weekend. May have him backwards, but Florida State really likes where they stand there right now. If you can get him, that's another guy that's a walking double-double. He's averaged 18 and 12 for his 2 seasons. Great rebounder, great shot blocker, great defender. No, he was Sunbelt Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year. If you can get Omier with Darin Green coming in and Jalen Gainey coming in, that team next year looks a hell of a lot better than it did coming in this offseason, knowing really about to lose Polite, really about to lose Malik Osborne. What's this team going to look like with a whole bunch of young guys? But it's not looking that way right now, especially if they can land Omier.
Who's the kid that chose UConn?
Naheem Aline. He came to campus. He came to Florida State's campus. I think it was Monday, and then he ended his visit early to go to UConn for a visit. So once that happened, I was like, this isn't happening. That was the guard from Virginia Tech, another 3-and-D guy, averaged 9 points, shot like 37% from three. He would have been a fine addition, but I think if you get Omier instead, nobody's going to complain whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't know baseball, but I do know basketball, and Darin Green is a tremendous pickup for Florida State. One thing they really lacked last season was that consistent 3-point threat, and I think he's going to give you that. Austin, I know you mentioned his defense, but with the way this coaching staff stresses that end of the floor, I don't think.
Oh yeah, he'll
I
get
don't
worked
think.
in.
Yeah,
He'll
his
get
defense
worked in.
will definitely move up a couple of notches. And you said it. He was crucial in UCF's upset of Florida State and Tallahassee back in what was it? December of 2020. Hit 6 of the 9 threes that UCF made in that game, and just a tremendous pickup for Florida State, especially with how they're starting to get involved in this transfer portal now. And I just feel like Darin Green and I will be linked forever. So hope he's a good player. The night he did that to Florida State was the day that was the day I got engaged. So I feel like we'll just be linked in a ring of harmony for the rest of our lives.
What the fuck?
And Florida State's landed 2 of the 30 best transfers on the market so far in Gainey and Green. You land Amir, you get 3 of the best 30. That's best case scenario right there. And I'm ignoring Dustin as much as I possibly can.
Please do.
And I see someone commenting, so he can blaze him like Savoy. He's arguably better than Savoy just because he can do it off the dribble. PJ was almost strictly catch and shoot. Very rarely did he put it on the floor. And I don't know if people remember, PJ really struggled his last season at Florida State. I think he only shot like 31, 32%. I don't see that happening with Green. I mean, that's a guy that's an automatic 36, 37% at minimum. Hopefully he can be better than that, especially this year since he's not going to be relied upon as a primary option like he was this past season. He's going to have guys like Matthew Cleveland and Caleb Mills to play off of. So if anything, he takes more high efficiency, better looks.
I'm liking this. Getting prepped for the next season because we are still dialed on basketball. We forgot what happened last year and acting like nothing even happened. And the transfer portal is something that I feel like is FSU's first true time. Yes, had past experience there in history, but I feel like this is a pivotal time where we get to see now basketball jumping into that transfer portal, which is going to be fun to watch.
And it's big that they're getting proven guys, with a huge young recruiting class coming in. The fact they're getting proven guys with a lot of experience in Gainey and Green, guys that have played 2-3 years and have produced at a high level where they're at. That's something we haven't really seen Coach M do that besides Caleb Mills last year.
Will there be a more dangerous duo than Green and Tom House? Is the question.
Best shooting duo in the ACC.
On the perimeter, will there be, House and Green just popping threes left and right?
Best shooting duo in the ACC, no question about it. People sleeping on House. I'm gonna say it. People are sleeping on him. He's probably not gonna play much this first year, but people sleeping on him.
Yeah, and I feel like the transfer portal has changed a lot of the way that Florida State operates, because you just look at Leonard Hamilton, and he's been doing this for a long time, and the transfer portal is relatively new. And throughout his career, I think the strength of his teams has been bringing in guys, developing them throughout 3 or 4 years, and then having success with teams that are led by veterans, guys that have played a lot of basketball and are experienced. And now I feel like you're almost getting away from that, and you're having to look at this as a 1-year thing. You're building a team for 1 year, and then the next year you're probably going to have to do the same thing, dip into the transfer portal, do different kinds of things to retool your roster. So really college basketball as a whole, I think, is changing.
We have to credit him for continuing to adapt. I mean, we've seen it the last 10 years where he's gone from twin post system to, 4 out, 1 in offense to now we're seeing a lot of 5 out offense these last couple of years with Malik Osborne playing at the 5, stretching it to 3. We've seen him go from a guy that, pretty much relied upon developing guys that those juniors and seniors are the ones that matter most to, these last 5 years, you're getting 5 stars that are coming in and playing right away, and Bacon and John Isaac and Scotty Barnes. The list goes on, Patrick Williams. And now you're seeing him adapt again with this transfer portal. With so many coaches stepping down just in the last year, between Coach K, Roy Williams, Jay Wright, the fact that Hamilton's continuing to adapt in his mid-70s is pretty incredible.
Not that it ties to FSU, but what do you think of the kid from Memphis, Bates?
I don't know.
No, not saying tied to FSU, but
yeah, I know.
That's just a whole weird.
Yeah.
Reclassifies, and
I'm never a huge fan of basketball players, especially reclassifying.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times they're just not ready. We see it work out every so often, but this wasn't one of those cases. I thought he was way underdeveloped, and he's way overhyped. We've been talking about Imani Bates since 2016, 2017. Guy just says next Kevin Durant. Guy can score from anywhere. Then he gets in a college system, and it's just not right for him. Memphis was a weird scenario. I'm not surprised that he's leaving, given that Memphis just got all those allegations handed down on them that everyone in the world saw coming. I wasn't surprised at all, and I wasn't that surprised he didn't play that well this year. Memphis played their best basketball when he was hurt and wasn't playing. I don't think that's a coincidence.
Mm-hmm. Man, this is a pretty lengthy podcast. I was not expecting us to have a 2-hour podcast, but here we are. A lot of good content in this one all around. I like it. If I was an FSU fan, I'd probably come here and rate Nate probably a C+ on the interruptions, but not too bad. Not too bad. It could have been a D.
I'd rate you a F- as a host because you're a douchebag.
There's nothing. I don't know what other podcasts you could get from this, but the fact of us being able to just allow to have. Never mind. I'm not even going to add on to it. You don't find this anywhere else. You don't. I
want to shout out the Minnesota Timberwolves for having an all-time Minnesota collapse tonight. It's just an absolute embarrassment.
Yeah, what happened? Give us the latest.
They were up 20. I think it was 26.
24. I thought. Yeah.
It was either 24 or 26 late in the third, and they lost by 9.
Jesus, yikes!
They were outscored 37-12 in the fourth quarter at home.
Tough scene.
All-time Minnesota collapse right there.
Yeah, no, that's a major.
I wouldn't know what it looks like.
How many points Ja Morant have?
He wasn't even that good. He had 16 points.
Tough. Glad I'm not betting on that stuff yet. But I am once the spring camp's over and get some more time to lose my money. And I'll probably be doing that. Yeah, I think that's going to wrap up everything. Like I said, we're looking to have 2 2013 national champions on the pod next week because we're expecting to have a little bit slower of a week. Keep an eye on the transfer portal, though. If you guys aren't in the Discord yet, if you're on Twitter, DM us or send us a tweet. It's free to go in. It's free to conversate. And why not this offseason? You're going to have a very boring offseason if you're not in that Discord. I will go ahead and tell you. But if you guys want to join that, it's free to join. Tweet or DM any of us on the podcast here. If you're on YouTube, it's in the description down below.
Don't DM me.
DM Dustin. Actually, everybody DM Dustin and just ask for the link. Yeah, slide into his DMs. That'll be the first time he's had anybody do that in like 8 years. So go ahead and do that first. And then make sure you hit the subscribe button. We're going to have a lot of content coming back to the YouTube, tons of stuff planned for the next couple of months and hopefully get some more guests on. But next week, and then on Monday, I promise to God the Rising Spirit interview is going to be going up. It's going to go up on Monday, I believe, because that'll give us enough
You haven't
time.
Put that up?
No, it's going up on Monday.
I was just about to ask.
Too much stuff happening. There's just
too many St. trips.
Now who cares?
One trip. I get one trip.
One too many.
I get one
did
trip.
That interview like 2 weeks ago.
I get one trip.
All you got to do is hit publish.
Man. It was a 30-minute interview.
I have to edit one part of it where it messed up there, and that's really taking a toll on me. Okay, I have to edit enough of this.
That portal news could keep us busy in the next few weeks.
Yeah,
on the podcast.
We'll be talking a lot of portal, and we'll have. I think next week's podcast is going to be really fun with having these 2 2013 national. I mean, these guys we've had on here before, but not at the same time. And I think it's going to.
I think we've had them on at the same time.
No, we've had on one, and then another one.
Well, after a certain camp, one of them came on. And
no, we've never had them both on at the same time.
We have.
Here, I'm going to give a hint. Who we had on was we're getting wild and we're getting loco, or we're getting los. I don't know. We have not had on.
What did you just say?
At the same time?
We have had them on at the same time.
Probably 2 years ago.
Now that I know,
it was a year ago. It was a year ago this week, actually.
I'll find it.
Get the out of here! And
I swear to God, look it up.
No way we've had these two people on here before at the same time. At the same time?
Yes, because I remember them bickering at the end.
One of them was on the show a lot, and one hosted a certain camp that we attended, and then we had a.
They were both on to recap that together.
I'm putting it in the group chat right now.
Man, this man.
I don't remember that. Don't remember it. But either way, they're going to be on here with us next week, and it's going to probably be pretty entertaining once again. Because there was one that I know both were two running backs were on at the same time, and that was highly entertaining. We want to do round 2, but that's not going to be the case this time. That's probably who you're thinking, D-Lou. Yeah.
Or just check the group chat real quick.
No,
running backs.
I'm
checking the group chat, but nobody's texting. Oh.
Kenny, Lois, we'll catch y'all next week. Peace.
We did it. That's not them.
It's not them.
No,
you just said it was.
It's not them. It's a wide receiver and it's a running back. Those were 2 running backs. So Dustin,
I'll pull this up, bro.
You go do your 10 push-ups and squats. By the way, Nate, Dustin is working out now. By the way, Dustin's working out now. His legs are killing him because he did a few squats.
Good. Yes, we did have these 2 on before.
We've had them both on before, but not at the same time.
Yes, we have.
No way. You're thinking of 2 running backs on at the same time.
No.
We'll talk about it after we close.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the post-production.
Yeah, kill the episode.
You just want to get out of here. All right, everybody enjoy the weekend. We'll talk to you guys next week. Look out for the Rising Spear interview. I can promise it's coming out on Monday, so enjoy that. If it doesn't happen, then I don't know. I have no clue. But, yeah, enjoy the weekend. Adios. Peace.
Not the same word. 17.5, same color t-shirt. Mama told me not the same word. 17.5, same